Welcome back to Sail On. Before we jump back into the beam project, let's take a minute to watch the owners of Island Marina sailing their boat, Charlotte Sea. Charlotte Sea is a celebrity-class sailboat, a Dutch design that was primarily built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. These 19.5-foot boats were originally built with strip plank mahogany, and like so many other older designs, were then built with plywood and then fiberglass. Charlotte Sea is a plywood boat, but still one of the earlier boats, probably built in Holland in the early 1960s. Well, enough daydreaming. Gotta get back to it.
To borrow a phrase from Sailor James, hello friends. That's a shout out to you, Sailing Tritia. Alright, today I'm going to dry fit these beams and just see if I can get them aligned. I've got the one that goes in front of the bulkhead here, one behind here. I'm going to set up a couple of jacks, get them up into place, kind of see how they align with the cabin top and also how the bottom of the two of them align. And then I might score or sand down the top of each of the beams so that they line up perfectly, and so that we get good contact with most of the cabin top. And where there are gaps, I've been two ways of treating that. One, on a Westsail 32 that had this done before, they put in rot resistant shims. And then my neighbor here, who is kind of a boatwright, he suggested actually using thickened epoxy and epoxying it to the cabin top to fill in the gaps. But I've also had advice to not do that, so then he suggested that maybe I use either thickened epoxy or even just Bondo. Put a coat of wax paper, put Bondo on the beam top when I dry fit it, let that Bondo cure, and then when you pull it out, pull the wax paper off, and you're going to have a perfect fit without needing any shims that might come loose or anything like that. So we'll see. I don't know which I'm going to do yet until I get this in and kind of see how the gaps look, but those are the options. So anyway, I probably won't film this even on time-lapse because it's going to be super boring, and I'll turn this back on when I get the beams into place and kind of the next step. Alright, sail on. Okay, I have them dry fit. What I have down here is my two jacks with these temporary posts coming up here to the two beams on each side of the bulkhead. These are just not very tight. I didn't want to spring load these and then have them suck the cabin top down. So these are just enough to kind of hold the beams into place. You can see there's a gap here. There's not a gap at the two corners. So clearly when I made these, I didn't get enough arch in them. When I did release these out of my clamps, they did spring back probably about a 1/4 inch. So it did happen. So if I was to do this again, I might think about that a little bit more. But it's just a learning experience, and then maybe anybody else doing this can kind of plan ahead for that. I have two options. I can fill this in with either epoxy or Bondo or shims, or I could sand some of these edges, the corners down. Like if I was to take these down about a 1/4 inch, that will give me a better fit, and then I would still fill in with a little bit of material, either epoxy or Bondo or shims, but it would be a better fit. So now let's look at the other side, on the head side of things. About the same. And then these cabin tops are not, it's not a continuous radius, so it's a little bit bigger here, a little bit smaller here, it gets a little bit bigger here. So again, I'm going to think about how to kind of correct that. I think again, because I made these a little bit bigger than normal, so I do have ability to shave some of this down. And I'm more concerned about the loading at the center than I am at the outsides, and even the cabin top generally. Most of the pressure is going to be down in this middle area, so I'm not worried about thinning these things out. And these will get bolted through the cabin or the bulkhead, so that should help carry that load. But so this is what they look like for right now. I'm going to measure this gap and kind of see what I'm looking at. It's probably 1/4 to 3/8, and I might just take a pencil and somehow get a block of wood or whatever and just follow the cabin top and score it and kind of see what it looks like. And then if I need to, I've got a belt sander with a really coarse belt on it, and just take it down to that whatever the scored line is or close to it. So that's it for now. So stay tuned. I was just trying to get a sense of how big that gap is, and it's hard to measure something like that with a tape measure. This old tongue groove or shiplap type material, this is 5/16, so it doesn't fit here, but there are a couple places it does fit. So that's 5/16 there. This is a little bigger, but again, just over, so it's probably about 3/8 of a gap. And then on this side, the fit is just generally better. I'm not able to fit this right there, so there's one spot. So I'm about 5/16 of an inch off. But again, even if I was to get this curve perfect, then I'm still going to have areas where it's in contact, like here where the cabin top is low and here where the cabin top is high. So I think the lesson that I'm learning, and probably everybody who is experienced already knows, is boats are kind of not exactly perfectly symmetrical. So it's just a learning experience of how to fit this stuff. It's kind of custom fitting every single cut. So anyway, that's it. Sail on. Alright, I've scribed a line on these beams, and now I'm going to actually use a planer, hand planer, to take, I'm going to use a hand planer to take them down. So I've got the line here. It might be hard to see, but it comes up and it ends right about here. So we're just taking a little bit off, up to about 1/4 of an inch, and then it tapers to there. And similar down here. Starts about here, and then it gets bigger. So I'll use my hand planer here to take that down. I'm going to leave the line. I'd rather take too little than too much, and I have similar line on both of these. So I'm going to do that, and we'll refit them and see if that feels good. So I planed this down, and it's got a much better fit now. Still a few little gaps here, but that's to be expected. So I am going to use some Bondo, so fiberglass filler. So I'm going to use wax paper, tape the surface of the beam, put some Bondo filler in these gaps, and then again just dry fit this, let that Bondo filler cure, and then basically I've got a perfect match to support the deck top. So that's what we're going to do. We'll see how it works. So I'm going to tape this all up. Alright. Wow, that was more difficult than I thought. It took longer to do that, and I had to sand down some of the filler because the front beam was too, it just kind of screwed it up a little bit. So I'm not sure that's the way to do it. Doing the shims might be the way to do it. And I didn't ask them if maybe they secured those shims with epoxy tabs or something just so they don't slip out. But anyway, this is what I've got going on. So you can see where the filler is, and it does a nice job of filling in the gap here, and again over here, this front, this, I guess this is the aft one. This one worked a lot better. This one, not as well, but I'm going to go with it, and I might go ahead and get some of those shims and shim up if I need to. But it does definitely close the gap in some places. So, and then the other thing I've been doing is trying to make sure these are aligned. The way I've been doing that is just taking this straight edge, and that looks pretty good there. This way, it's a little bit off, but we'll see. I think maybe that will go away when I bolt these into place. So I think I'm kind of done dry fitting them, and I think the next step is to bolt. I've been assuming I was going to bolt them through the bulkhead first and not through the cabin top first. That's probably what I'm going to do. So that's it for now. I think I'll clean up and be done. All right, sail on. Yesterday I was thinking about bolting this in and how to get it nice and tight up against cabin top. So I have the jacks here with the posts, so I can get it tight here, but I didn't know how I was going to do the outside. So this is my solution. Just these little cheap L brackets available at home improvement stores. A couple of screws there, and then I put in the shims just to get it nice and tight. And it really seems to do the difference. Make a difference. It just gets it nice and tight up there. So as I'm drilling, there's going to be no movement. And then so I'd have these on both sides, here and here. And then these posts are both under pressure. I have a little bit of pressure here to hold these together. And I've just been using a straight edge and trying to make sure that things are lined up. And they're looking pretty good. So I think with all that done, I'm now ready to drill the holes and install the carriage bolts that go through the bulkhead. I'm going to do 5. 2 over here, and then matching 2 over there, and then I'll do 1 in the middle. And hopefully that one doesn't get in the way of whatever, wiring and things like that. But I'm going to at least put it in for now, and if I have to take it out, I'll have to do that and fill the wood. But I'm pretty happy with the way that's all fitting right now. So I think I'm ready to go for it. So I guess I'll get out the drill and start drilling those holes. Alright, sail on. So I've missed filming some of this stuff, but now here is where we are. We have the beam in. I've got the bolts in and through. I just set the post. I made these little compression blocks here, and then the old compression post, which is the old compression post, it had been sitting on the teak and holly and was kind of compressing that, so I cut that out. That's a white oak block that then I set in place with thickened epoxy. And as I lifted the beam to give it room, cut the post to the appropriate length, a little bit longer, and then put in the epoxy, and then released a little bit of the pressure, so it's causing some of the epoxy to squeeze out. But this is now under a load basically, and I think this is going to work out well. So I'm just going to leave this jack back here is actually just pressing the squash block up there where it's being epoxied to the 2 beams. So I'm going to leave that there, and this one is pretty much, it's a little bit of pressure but not much. So I'm at a stopping point now. I got to clean up the boat because we're going to try and spend 2 nights on the boat, and it's shambles right now. So but wow, yeah, we're getting there. So all right, that's it. And yeah, I should have gotten more pictures of this, but what can you do? And it's got quite a bit more bearing on it now. Before, this curve went up quite a ways. It was just about a 2x2 area that was bearing. So this is a lot more up here. So that should be better. Okay, quick update here. So I'm kind of transitioning from working on this stuff inside to working on the mast step itself. just as a review, I've got all the bolts in, and I did the bolts down through the cabin top. These are extra long, and so I'm gonna have to probably cut those off. And I left all these exposed. I prefer them to be exposed. I mean, it looks nice when they're in and you have plugs over them, but then I just would rather have it exposed. It's a little more utilitarian. So I will cut these off, and I'll probably back these hex bolts off and get like a little capped nut, hex nuts, and put little cap nuts. And then these ones, clearly want to cut these down just to avoid injury on a tender scalp. So but I'm going to head outside and start looking at the mast step area, and I'll bring this camera and we'll look at that real quick, and then I'm going to get started on working on that.